Hello friends and welcome to our channel. Today's video is about
Woman's best friend disappears for 50 years, then her son does a little investigating.
But before we start, please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell and smash that like button. We really appreciate your continuous support.
When you're a kid, it's simple to make friends. Just go up to the group running around playing freeze tag, ask to join, and you're in. If you're lucky, these relationships can last a lifetime. But people move, time passes, and you may lose contact with childhood companions. That's what happened to 100-year-old Priscilla Martin. She hadn't spoken to her best friend, Amelia Richard, in 5 decades, so her son Donald decided to investigate, and his revelations were stunning. No matter how much time passes, there's something special about the memories you create with your childhood friends. Riding bikes, catching frogs, and maybe getting into a little bit of trouble. They're always more fun with a friend. That's what Priscilla Martin remembered. Even though Priscilla just celebrated her 100th birthday, she still recalled how much fun she and Amelia had together. "Oh God, she was the best friend I ever had," Priscilla said. Fair warning, it's only getting more wholesome from here. As of 2020, Priscilla resided in Rumford, New Hampshire at an assisted living facility. Her memory had gotten a little hazy, but she still recalled Amelia with fondness. When her son Donald visited, Amelia was a constant topic. "Every time we have a conversation, Amelia comes up," Donald said. With the coronavirus pandemic, he hasn't been able to visit his mom, but Donald and his wife Lois video chatted with her a few times every week. Donald gets a real kick out of talking with his mom. "I just love it when she talks about the past," Donald said. At this point, he's heard many of her stories, but he still encouraged Priscilla to tell them. This sweet man loved to listen to Mom's stories because he knew how happy it made Priscilla to relive them. That enthusiasm gave him a big idea as he prepared for a little vacation. Donald and Lois decided to take a trip to Rumford to see some of the places Priscilla fondly remembered. Before they left, the couple tried to research Amelia to see if she was still in the area. Of course, they didn't get their hopes up. They made it to Rumford the next day. Lois wanted to do some genealogical research into her own biological family at the Rumford Library, so Donald decided to contact Amelia's family in the meantime. Then they struck gold. The pair found the elderly woman's address and phone number. "I think my wife was more excited than I was," Donald said. "I guess I just assumed she wasn't alive." Fair assumption, since Priscilla was almost 100 herself. When Donald called the number, a young man answered. Donald asked him about Amelia and was then quickly greeted by an extremely excited older woman, Amelia. She was absolutely delighted. She was so excited and she said, "Come over." And I said, "What about the whole COVID thing?" And she said, "Come over now." So I wasn't going to say no, Donald said. It's hard to say no to a 99-year-old. Donald told Lois the wonderful news, and the two drove to Amelia's. She'd lived in the same home for almost 80 years, moving in when she was a newlywed all those years ago. The home is 2 stories and quite clean. Amelia still lives there alone. The pair arrived to see Amelia climbing the stairs from her basement, where she does all of her laundry. She sleeps on the 2nd floor. Even at 99, she's still getting plenty of exercise. Ridiculously impressive. Lois video called Priscilla so the 2 long-term friends could reconnect. This was the first time they'd seen each other since 1970. "Oh my God, she looks good. You look very good," Amelia said to her dear friend over FaceTime. Over the call, they caught up on 50 years of memories and checked in on each other's relatives. Amelia was one of 8, and only she and her sister were left. Priscilla, out of 13 siblings, was the last one. Priscilla and Amelia were ecstatic to talk to each other. "I remember our good old days," Amelia said. "We had a lot of fun," Priscilla replied. "We used to take our walks every Sunday. To tell you the truth, we were looking for boyfriends." Even though they hadn't spoken in 50 years, there wasn't anything lost between the now elderly women. "I think of you often," Amelia said. "We never forgot each other," Priscilla responded. Donald felt overjoyed with his mother's special reunion. Even though she's 100, he still feels like he's learning new things about the centenarian. "I feel like the more I know about my mother, the more I know about me," Donald said. If you've lost contact with one of your childhood friends, take this as a sign to reach out to them. You never know, they're probably thinking of you too and would love to reconnect. Even if Priscilla was at all shy or worried about reconnecting, that one conversation made all the difference. The Martin family learned the value of rekindling old relationships, in part because they were inspired by medical aide Bev Boro, who pined to reunite with her long-lost sister. As a baby, Bev Boro was practically raised by her siblings, who were only 10 and 11 at the time. Their father, who was a truck driver, would take their mother on the road. When the neighbors heard of this, they called in state officials. The state deemed that Bev's parents were unfit to take care of the children, so Bev and her siblings were sent to foster care. Thankfully, they stayed connected over the years. When she was a little older, Bev learned of another sibling she never knew of before, her half-sister, Doris. Doris was 20 at the time Bev and her siblings were placed into foster care. Bev did as much research as she could in hopes that she could locate her, but all she could find was her full name, Doris Crippen. Since she was of legal age in the U.S., Doris was living on her own when Bev was born. Doris had met her other siblings, even cradling baby Bev in her arms. She loved each and every one of them, so it was devastating to have them taken away from her. For years, she searched. Doris knew that her siblings still resided in their home state of Nebraska, but that's all the information she had. Both sisters longed to see each other again, and for the next 53 years, they would continue their search in vain. The decades passed, and Doris wasn't a 20-year-old anymore. She became a mother of 3 and a grandmother of 16. At the age of 73, Doris was surrounded by love, but still missing the rest of her family. She lived on her own in an Omaha apartment where the unthinkable happened to her. One night in 2020, Doris reached for a glass of water, but lost her balance and fell out of her bed. Unable to move and with no one else around, she laid on the floor throughout the night and half of the following day. She hoped somebody would notice before it was too late. Thankfully, her son Chad stopped by and rushed her to a hospital to care for her broken arm. Although Doris needed to be seen by a doctor, it was a frightful thing to do at the time. Across the country, the pandemic of COVID-19 was spreading like wildfire. Hospitals were hit hard by the coronavirus and had to take extra measures in controlling the spread. Any patients coming in for help needed to be tested for the virus. Doris had her test like everyone else. When the results came in, Doris's life was turned around. Doris tested positive for COVID-19, throwing her into the battle of her life. Chances of her survival were low given her age and condition, but she hoped to pull off a miracle. In a month, she recovered and was sent over to rehabilitation in Dunkloud Gardens Rehabilitation Center and Nursing Home in Fremont, Nebraska. There, she received excellent care from the most special medical aid. The medical aide came into Dunkloud Gardens Rehabilitation Center for another day at work. She looked at the names of the patients for that day and saw the name Doris Crippen. In shock, she said, "I think this is my sister." The medical aide was Bev Boro, Doris's long-lost sister. Bev had to figure out how to explain who she was to Doris. She knew that Doris was hard of hearing, so she found another way to break the incredible news. Doris was finally recovering from her traumatic experience with COVID-19. She was happy to be out of the hospital, but there was something strange about her medical aide. The woman started asking her questions about her father using a dry erase board. At the same time, Doris couldn't place why she looked so familiar. Bev wrote on the board, "Is your father's name Wendell Huffman?" Doris was surprised that the medical aide knew her father's name, but she soon learned that her father was the aide's father as well. She had finally found her little half-sister. Tears ensued as they began to make up for lost time. Doris was so happy to find Bev, she nearly fell out of her chair and burst into tears. She shared with the news outlets, "I never thought I'd find her. I couldn't sleep that night. I was just so happy." The happiness continued as Bev cared for her beloved sister. Since Doris was still being cared for in the nursing home and the COVID-19 pandemic was still a risk, Doris and the rest of the patients couldn't receive any visitors. Luckily for Doris, Bev was an employee and allowed to spend time with Doris. It would be some time until Doris met the rest of her family in person. Thanks to technology and the internet, Doris virtually met with the rest of her long-lost siblings via Facebook. While she waited for the pandemic to end, Doris counted her many blessings. Doris shares her faith with interviewers, saying, "I guess it was God's plan that this happened." Bev and Doris plan to eventually have a reunion with the whole family in person. Then, Doris can meet Bev's husband, 3 children, and her 5 grandchildren. Until the coast is clear, Bev and Doris have each other to fall back on. In tough times, having a loved one close makes all the difference. They are firm believers in the power of family and are following the example of other relatives who got separated at an early age. Doris and Bev might have reunited far earlier if they had parents like Richard Cushworth and Mercedes Casaneas. After Richard and Mercedes got married in 2012, they moved to El Salvador to be missionaries, then settled down in Dallas. They wouldn't remain in the U.S. for long. Why? Because the couple was pregnant with their first child, a native Salvadorian. Mercedes wanted to give birth in her home country, so the two flew to a hospital known for its high care standards and excitedly waited for their new baby to arrive. They didn't have to wait long. Soon, via an emergency C-section, Mercedes gave birth to Jacob. She briefly held him before he was whisked away to the nursery to be with the other newborns. She wouldn't get to see her new son again until the next day. After a few more days in recovery, the new family left the hospital together. They traveled throughout Central America for a few months before returning again to America. This was when the trouble started. Time passed, and quickly, Mercedes' intuition told her something was off about Jacob. As he started to grow, he began to look increasingly dissimilar to his parents. The new mother thought about her time in the Salvadorian care facility. That second day, when she got to see Jacob again, Mercedes told staff members that she didn't think it was her son. She was assured that she had been out of her mind on drugs when she first held him, so it would feel different now. Though the care team assured her she had the same baby, now more than 6 months later, Jacob really didn't look related to either parent. Mercedes felt conflicted. You love this baby like your baby, but then inside, I had the thought, what if this is not my baby? Her worries consumed her, but she didn't confide in her husband. She had to be sure that Jacob was really hers, though, so she independently ordered a DNA maternity test. The results answered some of her questions. Jacob was not her son. Mercedes was heartbroken. I just fell on the floor, she said. I had two thoughts. What is going to happen with this baby, and where is my baby? Finally, Mercedes opened up to Richard and told him everything. Richard, too, was devastated. At first, he and Mercedes wanted to keep both Jacob and their biological son, but soon realized that faux Jacob had his own legitimate family who may have been experiencing their own confusion with the couple's birth son. So, the hospital conducted DNA tests on every child who was born on the same day as Jacob, and that's how the terrified parents finally reconnected with their child. Mercedes was taken aback by how fast everything was. And then suddenly, they were finally reunited with their biological son. We finally saw him, and when he saw us, he was smiling. He was laughing, Mercedes said. They were sad to say goodbye to Jacob, but knew he was going home too. Immediately, both of the children fit right in with their new families, and according to Mercedes, there was a really cute coincidence. When we took them and we switched, they each were dressed like their fathers. It was really nice. They renamed their biological son Moses. In the Bible, Moses went missing for 3 months, and the parents thought the name was a perfect fit. Unfortunately for the reunited family, their troubles didn't end with the baby switch. Now the couple was fighting a new foe, bureaucracy. Before they were allowed to leave the country, they needed Moses' birth certificate. Richard, who was born in the UK, contacted the British Embassy for help. Bernard Garside was the representative who took on the couple's case. He was very concerned about navigating El Salvador's court system, and for months he went back and forth with authorities. Months piled up. For 3/4 of a year, Richard and Mercedes were living in El Salvador and burning through their money. If they couldn't get through the legalese soon, they were going to lose their whole savings. Meanwhile, before finally leaving for the U.S. again, the family had a reunion with Jacob and his bio family in the summer of 2016. They also went through reams of red tape to obtain their son's birth certificate. And while the most difficult part of the legal process was confirming that each parent was with the proper child, everything worked out in the end. Both families were with their right child. Bernard was very happy to help the little family work through the process. Each family was, in a way, thankful for the experience. Because the two families had spent a few hours together, taking plenty of pictures and videos, each pair planned to stay connected as their children grew up. Though it was a lengthy process, each family got something that made it worth it: their son. The family knew they were fortunate to only miss 3 months of Moses' life. In March of 1978, Vera Lashtour and her husband, Nicolai, welcomed a new baby into the world, a daughter whom they named Tatiana. It should have been the happiest time of their lives, but for Vera, something just felt off. All babies have their growing pains, but Tatiana seemed absolutely miserable as an infant. She cried non-stop, and when Vera fed her daughter, the child would struggle and fight against her. Vera hoped this was something that would pass, but it didn't pass. As Tatiana grew up, she continued being difficult, moody, and hard to control. However, what Vera didn't know was that Tatiana actually had a pretty disturbing reason for behaving this way in the first place. Vera's family and neighbors had always whispered about the little girl, and now Tatiana was getting old enough that she could start to piece together some of the rumors. What her family believed was something Vera refused to accept. The rumor was that Tatiana wasn't actually Vera's daughter. Instead, gossip led to the idea of Tatiana and another baby being switched at birth. It was so far-fetched that Vera and Nikolai initially refused to believe such an outrageous assumption. In 1999, Vera and her family were preparing to leave their native Moldova to start new lives in the United States. That's when a neighbor with very important information finally decided that she had to speak up and say something. The neighbor told a story about another infant, born the same time as Tatiana, that always cried and was suffering from the same problems when it came to eating. The uncanny similarity was enough to make Vera and Nikolai's ears perk up. "She knew us," Nikolai said of the neighbor in a November 2017 interview with Inside Edition. "She knew the other family, and she knew that both kids were having problems after the hospital." Vera and Nikolai weren't able to find the other family prior to their move from Moldova to the United States. However, anytime they visited their home country, they made it a point to search everywhere for potential answers. In August 2017, there was a major breakthrough. Using social media, Tatiana, now in her 30s, and her sister Victoria learned that the name of the other child from their neighbor's story was Valentina Suman. Tatiana even found Valentina online. Tatiana and Valentina connected and confirmed what they already suspected. They were born on the same day in the same hospital. They also exchanged photographs, and Tatiana couldn't believe what she was seeing. Valentina looked just like her parents. Vera's son, Anatoly, still vividly remembers the moment the discovery was made. "My mom asked me to come over. She opened a laptop with 2 baby photos and pointed at one, asking me to tell her who it was." He added, "I told her it was Victoria, my younger sister. It looked just like her. We knew in our hearts that Valentina was our sister based on the pictures. She looked exactly like my younger sister," added Anatoly, but there was only one way for the family to confirm what they all believed to be true. In October of 2017, both families were invited to appear on a Russian TV show to share their story. While there, they took a DNA test to confirm what they all already suspected to be the truth. The results surprised no one. "It was the first time we had the opportunity to see our birth sister, Valentina, and hug each other, cry together," Anatoly said. "Also that day was the first time my sister Tatiana had the opportunity to hug and cry with her birth family." So, what happened the day the girls were born? On March 27, 1978, their mothers were sharing a hospital room. The 2 little girls were taken away to be bathed, and when they were returned, they were accidentally swapped, and no one noticed. Since reuniting with her birth parents, Vera and Nikolai, Valentina has become an integral part of the family. Her 16-year-old daughter would see her grandparents often, and Valentina even became a surrogate mother to one of her new nephews. Amazingly, neither of the families had any plans to sue the hospital for this colossal blunder. In fact, they were simply overjoyed that everything was finally corrected and that the girls now had not 1, but 2 families. In fact, Anatoly and his newly discovered sister had grown so close that he currently put plans in motion to help move her from Moldova to the United States so that she could be closer to her biological family. Anatoly's relationship with Tatiana hadn't changed at all either. She was still his sister as far as he was concerned. I talked to her and I told her that nothing changes between us. The only difference is that I gain a sister. We are brother and sister, and they're using other reunited siblings to plan for their future. Number 1. Jorge and Carlos Bernal Castro and William and Wilbur Kanyas Velasco. This was a twin doubleheader. Pictured left to right below, Jorge and Carlos, as well as William and Wilbur, believed they were fraternal twin brothers. As it turns out, there was a mix-up years back at the hospital, and they were actually 2 pairs of identical twins. This truth came to light when a woman in a butcher shop mistook William for Jorge and then showed him a picture of his long-lost sibling. Today, the 4 men are quite close and view themselves as 4 brothers. Number 2. Audrey Doering and Gracie Rainsberry. Born in China, these sisters were adopted by 2 different American families. Audrey's mom later did some research about her daughter's early life, leading her to a photograph of her birth mother holding two identical girls. These twins, Audrey left and Gracie right, reunited on Good Morning America, and they even got to go on vacation together in San Diego. Everyone they passed must have thought they were seeing double. Number 3. Bobby Shafran, David Kellman, and Eddie Galland. These teenage triplets, pictured from left to right, found each other when they were all coincidentally living in the same area of New York. Though they became inseparable, they found out they were subjects in the controversial study that split identical siblings and watched them grow up in different environments. In 1995, struggles with mental illness caused Eddie, middle, to take his own life. A documentary about their life stories called Three Identical Strangers debuted in 2018. Number 4. Anai, Borier, and Samantha Futerman. An actress best known for her supporting role in Memoirs of a Geisha, Samantha had no idea that appearing in a YouTube video would change her life. But after Anai spotted her doppelganger on her computer, the two connected and confirmed they were sisters. Now, these twins are just having fun making up for all that lost time. Number 5. Jim Lewis and Jim Springer. These brothers didn't meet until they were 39, but what was really strange was how much they had in common. Both married first and second wives named Linda and Betty, named their sons James, smoked Salem cigarettes, drove blue Chevrolets, and had a childhood dog named Toy. Number 6. Anne Hunt and Elizabeth Hamill. These sisters hold the Guinness World Record for the longest separation of twins. Their biological mother meant to put up both for adoption, but had to keep Elizabeth due to a spinal condition. After decades in the dark, Anne left and Elizabeth finally met at age 78. Number 7. Oscar Storr and Jack Youth. Not all twins have everything in common. When their parents split soon after their birth, Jack grew up as a Jew in Trinidad and Israel, while Oscar grew up Catholic in Germany. Despite his Jewish family, he even had to join the Hitler Youth. Their first meeting in 1954 was fairly awkward, in large part because of the language barrier. However, they bonded later in life and found they had more in common than at first glance. For example, both flushed the toilet before and after using it. Number 8. Paula Bernstein and Elise Shine. These sisters reunited at age 35 and discovered that they too were part of a study on separated twins. Paula, Wright, and Elise took their story public, and as a result, twins in New York are now required to be adopted by the same family. Number 9. Debbie Mellman and Sharon Posit. Debbie's mom waited until her daughter was 45 to tell her that she was not only adopted, but also had a twin. Thanks to a private investigator, the two finally met and found they shared quite a few traits. One telltale sign that these two are related is that they both cross their eyes when they get excited. Talk about a totally unique trait. Number 10. Emily Falk and Lynn Backman. Emily's and Lynn's, Wright, adoptive parents were initially in touch with one another, but lost track over the years. By the time they were 29, the girls pieced together the scant information available to find each other on Facebook. Number 11. Zhang Yong and Liu Yonggang. After a friend of Yong's met someone named Yonggang, Wright, who looked exactly like him, Yong tracked down the man and learned they were identical twins. They took their family reunion a step further and located their birth mother, who was living over 1,000 miles away. Number 12. Anaconda and Ella Cuarras. These two were adopted by different families through the same adoption agency. The parents kept in touch, not knowing the girls were sisters. However, a striking resemblance between Anna, left, and Ella spurred them to take a DNA test. Needless to say, the results were positive. Number 13. Howard Burak and Doug Rausch. Both men always knew they were adopted, but neither caught wind that he had a brother. However, a documentary project called The Twinning Reaction reunited Howard and Doug, as well as other multiples who never met their siblings. Number 14. Siam and Fabian. Two French families adopted these Vietnamese sisters. Years later, Siam's friends came across a girl on Facebook who looked like her, so Siam sent her a friend request. Though Fabienne ignored the message at first, she eventually accepted. When the news broke that they were twins, we can only assume they got a lot of likes. Number 15. Jerry Levy and Mark Newman. Both brothers were volunteer firefighters, and that proved to be the vital link that brought them together. A mutual acquaintance, aware of their similarities, put them in touch, and the two hit it off. Jerry, Wright, and Mark learned they shared a love for Budweiser and were confirmed bachelors.
Did you enjoy today's story? Let us know what you think about it in the comments. If you believe this story was amazing, don't hesitate to share it with your buddies, hit the subscribe button, and activate the notification bell so you never miss your daily dose of incredible stories.